Done cleaning toilet block 3 yet, Walker? Staff Sergeant Jake Harrison's voice cut through the scorching desert air at Whiskey Jack Range like a knife through paper. His massive frame, wrapped in a military green t-shirt, stretched tight across muscled shoulders, blocked the doorway of the latrine facility. The bald head gleamed with sweat under the 110-degree California sun. Rachel Walker, 38 years old, was on her knees scrubbing the concrete floor, her rubber-gloved hands gripping the worn mop handle. She froze for just a heartbeat at the sound of that voice. Her light brown hair, pulled into a messy high bun with a few loose curls escaping, caught the harsh fluorescent light. The gray t-shirt she wore was already damp with perspiration and cleaning solution. 8 years. 8 years since Ramadi. 8 years since she'd dragged this 220-pound Marine out of a burning Humvee while 2 bullets tore through her left shoulder. Now, Harrison stood there laughing with 4 other snipers, not recognizing the slender woman with striking green eyes and fair skin, dotted with freckles across her cheeks and nose. The janitor in worn brown combat boots who cleaned their toilets. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" Harrison stepped into the bathroom, his boots still caked with desert mud, leaving tracks across the floor she'd just cleaned. "Clean this place up. We need to use it." He kicked the water bucket, sending soapy water splashing across Rachel's dark military pants. Rachel rose slowly to her feet, her movements careful and submissive, shoulders hunched in the familiar posture of someone who had learned to be invisible. The high bridge of her nose caught the light as she kept her eyes downcast. Outside, angry shouts echoed from the firing line. The elite sniper team was failing miserably at their 1,800-yard target. She quietly reached for the long canvas bag propped in the corner. "Where do you think you're going?" Harrison blocked the exit, his bulk filling the doorway. "I didn't give you permission to leave." But they had no idea that the woman they were trampling on harbored a secret that could shatter everything they believed in. If watching Rachel being humiliated while cleaning toilets makes you as angry as it makes me, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps more people discover these stories of quiet justice. And if you want to support the channel, the thanks button below is an amazing way to help me keep telling stories like this. Now, let's see what Rachel is about to do as she steps out of that toilet block with her mysterious canvas bag in hand. The blazing sun hit Rachel's face as she emerged from the latrine, the long canvas bag slung over her shoulder. The firing line at Whiskey Jack Range stretched out before her. 5 Marine Force recon snipers lying prone behind their state-of-the-art rifles, each one representing over $50,000 of precision engineering. And every single one of them was missing. "This is impossible!" Lance Corporal Madison Brooks slammed her fist into the dirt. The athletic blonde's ponytail whipped as she lifted her head from her scope. 20 shots, 20 misses, the wind meters showing 3 different readings at once. "Cut the excuses, Brooks," Harrison barked, striding toward the line. "You're supposed to be the best the Corps has to offer. Figure it out." Rachel paused near the observation area, her trained eyes automatically cataloging what she saw. Tyler Ross, the youngest of the team at 22, had his bipod positioned wrong, causing a 2-degree cant in his scope. Marcus Webb, built like a linebacker, was gripping his rifle too tightly, fighting the natural point of aim. And Lance Morrison, the Texan with the drawl thick as molasses, had his parallax adjustment off by at least 50 yards. "Hey, cleaning lady!" Madison spotted her first. "Get out of here! This is a restricted firing area." Rachel stopped walking but didn't retreat. Her eyes tracked the wind flags at various distances downrange. 3 different currents, just as she'd suspected. The thermal updraft from the rocks at 1,000 yards, the valley funnel effect from the ravine on the left, and the primary wind at the target itself, all moving in different directions. "Thermal updraft at 1,000 yards, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "Valley creating a funnel effect at 1,500, the flag at the target's lying." "What did you say?" Tyler Ross jumped to his feet, his young face twisted in irritation. "Are you deaf? Get back to your toilets." Marcus Webb stood up too, all 6 feet 4 inches of him. "Lady's talking to herself, probably heat stroke, someone call medical." But Harrison had gone very still. He was staring at Rachel's wrist where her sleeve had ridden up, revealing a circular scar, old and faded, the kind of mark a bullet leaves when it goes clean through. His eyes traveled up to her face, really looking at her for the first time. The angular features, those distinctive green eyes, the way she stood with her weight perfectly balanced despite appearing submissive. Walker? His voice had changed, dropped an octave. Rachel Walker? Psycho Walker? The firing line went quiet. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. That's her real name? Madison asked, lowering her rifle. Wait, this is just the janitor, right? Harrison's face was changing color, red creeping up from his thick neck. You're the reason my team died in Ramadi. 3 good Marines, dead because you abandoned your position to save some local. The words hung in the air like rounds fired. Rachel finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Her green eyes were calm as still water, but something flickered deep within them. She set down the canvas bag carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she worked the old leather straps. I didn't abandon anything, she said quietly. Her voice carried despite its softness, with a quality that made the younger Marines unconsciously lean forward. Blue Star Protocol. Harrison went rigid. The blood drained from his face as quickly as it had risen. What did you just say? Holy cow, Tyler whispered. What's Blue Star Protocol? Madison was on her feet now, moving closer. Wait a minute. Ramadi 2016? My brother was there. Brian Brooks. He died in that operation. Her athletic frame tensed, fists clenching. He died because someone broke position, because someone decided a civilian was more important than Marines. My father wrote the after-action report, Tyler added, his voice gaining confidence as he saw Harrison's reaction. Major Ross. He said the sniper-designated Psycho Walker violated direct orders and compromised the entire operation. Rachel continued unwrapping her rifle, each movement deliberate and calm despite the growing hostility around her. The worn canvas fell away to reveal not a modern precision rifle, but an old Remington 700. The walnut stock was scarred and weathered, the barrel showing wear from countless rounds. The scope was simple, almost primitive compared to the computerized optics on the firing line. Lance Morrison laughed, his Texas drawl thick with derision. Y'all are getting worked up over nothing. Look at that antique. Probably bought it at a pawn shop. Thing belongs in a museum, not on a range. Rachel adjusted the medical-grade wrist stabilizer wrapped around her right wrist. The specialized nerve support device, originally developed for traumatic brain injury patients, had been adapted for soldiers with combat-related nerve damage. The micro-stabilization technology with pressure sensors allowed her to maintain accuracy in her daily cleaning work, though her fingers still trembled occasionally. The legacy of too many years squeezing triggers in places that didn't officially exist. The device alone cost more than most people made in a month, hidden beneath the facade of a simple janitor's supplies. Master Gunnery Sergeant Phillips had been walking past with a clipboard when he heard the commotion. The grizzled veteran stopped, his weathered face showing interest as he observed the scene. 28 years in the Corps had taught him to recognize when something significant was happening. Problem here, Staff Sergeant Harrison? Phillips asked, his gravelly voice carrying the weight of authority. No problem, Master Guns, Harrison replied, but his voice was strained. Just explaining to the civilian help that this is a restricted area. Phillips looked at Rachel, then at the rifle in her hands. His eyes narrowed as he studied the weapon. Something about the way she held it, the unconscious competence in her grip, the way her body had already shifted into a shooter's stance without seeming to realize it. That's a 700 police model, Phillips said slowly. Match grade barrel, Macmillan stock. Don't see many of those anymore. He stepped closer. Serial number's been filed down. That's a federal crime unless... Rachel looked at him directly. Unless it was issued that way. The implication hung in the air. Weapons with removed serial numbers were only issued to units that didn't officially exist, for operations that never happened. You're saying you were an operator? Madison's voice dripped with skepticism. This janitor? Look at her. She's nobody. She cleans toilets for a living. Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight, Master Guns Phillips said quietly. He was studying Rachel more intently now, something nagging at the back of his mind. What unit were you with? Rachel didn't answer directly. Instead, she moved toward the firing line with that same careful, submissive posture. But Phillips noticed what the others missed. The way she automatically checked the wind flags, how her eyes tracked the mirage patterns, the subtle shift in her breathing as she assessed the range conditions. Get her out of here, Harrison ordered, his voice harsh. I don't care what unit she claims she was with. She's a disgrace to the uniform she once wore, a coward who got Marines killed. That's when Marcus Webb made his move. The big sergeant stepped forward and grabbed Rachel's collar, yanking her back from the firing line. You heard the staff sergeant. Time to go. Rachel's gray t-shirt stretched and tore at the shoulder, revealing part of her upper back. There, partially visible, was the edge of what looked like an elaborate tattoo. Not just any tattoo, but something that made Master Guns Phillips take a sharp breath. Let her go, Sergeant Webb, Phillips ordered, his voice sharp. Now! Marcus released her, confused by the Master Gunnery Sergeant's tone. Rachel adjusted her torn shirt, but the damage was done. The edge of black ink was visible, part of what appeared to be wings. I need to make a call, Phillips said, already reaching for his phone. Nobody moves, nobody touches her. Harrison's face was a mix of anger and something else. Fear? Master Guns, you don't understand. This woman, she's the reason. I said nobody moves, Phillips repeated, his voice brooking no argument. He stepped away, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. Rachel stood quietly in the scorching sun, her rifle held loosely at her side. The tremor in her hands was more visible now. Whether from nerve damage or memories, it was impossible to tell. The 5 snipers formed a loose semicircle around her, their earlier mockery replaced by uncertainty. Wait, did you catch that? Harrison just mentioned Ramadi and something called Blue Star Protocol. There's something much bigger going on here. Drop a comment below if you picked up on that detail, or if you've ever been misjudged because of how you look. Meanwhile, Rachel's about to do something that will change everything. The silence stretched out, broken only by the distant sound of Phillips's urgent phone conversation. Corporal Evans, who had been manning the range tower, climbed down and approached cautiously. Unlike the others, he'd been watching through the spotting scope and had seen things they had missed. The way Rachel had unconsciously corrected her stance, the subtle adjustments that spoke of muscle memory so deeply ingrained, it was automatic. Hey, Evans said quietly, standing a respectful distance from Rachel. That scar on your wrist, entrance and exit wound, clean through, that's not from an accident. Rachel glanced at him, a flicker of acknowledgement in her green eyes. Mosul, 2014. Mosul? Tyler scoffed. There were no female snipers in Mosul. Women weren't allowed in combat roles then. Weren't supposed to be, Rachel corrected softly. Different rules for different units. Harrison couldn't contain himself any longer. Stop playing games. You want everyone to know what you did? Fine. Operation Blue Star, November 2016. Overwatch position outside Ramadi. 3-man team needed cover while extracting a high-value target. Instead of maintaining position, she abandoned her post to engage a secondary target, a civilian truck that was approaching our position. Madison's face hardened. That truck was carrying children. My brother saw it in his scope. He called it in. You chose those kids over Marines. The children were cover, Rachel said quietly. The driver was Abbas Rashid. The name meant nothing to the younger Marines, but Master Guns Phillips had stopped talking on his phone. He was staring at Rachel with something approaching awe. Abbas Rashid was dead, Harrison insisted. Killed in an airstrike 6 months before Ramadi. CIA confirmed it. CIA confirmed what they wanted people to believe, Rachel replied. Her hands had stopped trembling now, steady as stone. He was very much alive, and he was 30 seconds from detonating 400 pounds of explosives under your extract route. That's not what the report said, Tyler's voice cracked. My father's report said you engaged a civilian vehicle without authorization. Rachel finally showed emotion, a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your father wrote what he was told to write. Classification levels, need to know. The families deserved a story they could understand, even if it wasn't true. Lance Morrison had been quiet until now, but something was bothering him. Wait a minute. If you took out Rashid, if you saved the extract route, why were 3 Marines killed? Because, Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone on our side told Rashid exactly where the Overwatch position would be. The mortars started falling 60 seconds after I took the shot. Brooks, Chen, and Martinez never had a chance. Madison stumbled backward as if she'd been struck. You're lying. Brian died because you abandoned them. That's what we were told. That's what his letter home said. I have the surveillance footage, Phillips said, ending his call. It's been declassified as of 6 minutes ago. Director's orders. They're sending it now." He looked at Harrison. "You might want to sit down for this, Staff Sergeant. Everything you believed about Ramadi is about to change." The tablet in Philip's hands chimed. He pulled up the video file, the screen showing the green-tinted view of a night vision camera. The timestamp read, November 15th, 2016, 03:47 hours. "That's our position," Harrison breathed, recognizing the building. "That's where Brooks and the others." On screen, a lone figure in a ghillie suit was visible on an adjacent rooftop. Even in the grainy footage, the precision of movement was unmistakable. The figure, clearly female by build, was tracking something off-screen. "There," Phillips pointed. "Lower right, civilian truck approaching." They watched as the truck moved toward the marked extraction route. In any other circumstance, it would have been waved through. Women and children were visible in the back. "Thermal imaging layer," Phillips said, switching views. The children in the back remained cool blue shapes, but the truck bed itself glowed white-hot. 400 pounds of homemade explosive, enough to turn your extract vehicle into scrap metal. On screen, the sniper adjusted position. A barely visible muzzle flash. The truck driver slumped forward. The vehicle coasted to a stop mere yards from where the extract would pass minutes later. "Now watch this," Phillips said grimly. The timestamp jumped forward 90 seconds. Mortar rounds began impacting the sniper's building with devastating accuracy. Not random fire, targeted strikes. "She stayed in position," Harrison said, his voice hollow. "The building was coming apart, and she stayed to provide cover for the extract." They watched the lone figure continue firing even as parts of the structure collapsed around her. Only when the extraction vehicle was clear did she move, and by then it was too late. The building's facade gave way. "She rode a collapsing wall 3 stories down," Phillips said. "Broke 4 ribs, punctured lung, nerve damage to her right arm that never fully healed, and she still managed to drag herself 6 blocks to the secondary rally point." The video ended. The desert sun continued its relentless assault, but nobody seemed to notice anymore. "Why wasn't this released?" Tyler asked, his young face confused and angry. "Why did my father lie in the report?" "Because someone with significant rank wanted her discredited," Phillips said. "Someone who didn't want questions asked about how Rashid knew exactly where our Overwatch would be. The investigation was buried, and Captain Walker was medically retired with sealed records." "Captain?" Marcus Webb spoke for the first time since grabbing her. "You were an officer?" During the tense confrontation, Rachel discreetly retrieved her prescription nerve medication from her gear bag. The specialized pharmaceutical, a toying-edge treatment originally developed for NASA astronauts to maintain fine motor control in zero-gravity environments, had been adapted for combat veterans with severe peripheral nerve damage. Each pill, costing over $200 per dose, contained proprietary compounds that temporarily stabilize the misfiring neurons caused by blast trauma. Without this medication, the tremors in her hands would make it impossible to hold a rifle steady, let alone achieve the precision that had once made her legendary. Rachel looked at the rifle in her hands, then at the 5 snipers who had spent the morning failing to hit their target. Your computers can read data, wind speed, humidity, barometric pressure, but they can't read the truth of what air does between you and your target. She moved to an open firing position, her movements no longer hiding behind the submissive posture of a janitor. This was Captain Rachel Walker, CIA Special Activities Division, call sign Valkyrie. The transformation was subtle but complete. "Ma'am," Evans called from the tower. "Winds gusting to 25 miles per hour. Visibility's dropping with that sandstorm coming in from the west." "Perfect," Rachel said, settling into a prone position. She didn't use the bipod, instead resting the rifle on her worn canvas bag. "Chaos is just another pattern if you know how to read it." Harrison found his voice. "Even if everything you said is true, even if the video's real, you still let my team down. You should have called in the truck, let the ground team handle it." 30 seconds, Rachel replied, her eyes settling behind the simple scope. "That's how long we had. Radio chatter would have taken 20. Rashid had a dead man's switch. If he even suspected he'd been made, he would have detonated early." "So you made the call alone," Madison said, her voice bitter. "Decided you knew better than everyone else." "I made the only call that would save lives," Rachel confirmed. "And I've lived with the consequences every day since. Master Guns Phillips was watching her settle into position with professional interest. That nerve damage, your right arm. How do you compensate? This is it, the moment everything changes. If you're holding your breath right now, share this video with someone who needs to see that true strength can hide behind the humblest appearance. Because Rachel is about to show these elite snipers something they'll never forget. "You don't fight the tremor," Rachel said, her breathing already settling into a sniper's rhythm. "You incorporate it, like reading wind, but internal." She was looking downrange now, but not at the flags or the mirage. She was reading something deeper, something that couldn't be measured by instruments, the way grass bent at different distances, the subtle color changes in the air itself, the feel of pressure differentials against her exposed skin. "Targets at 1,800 yards, Tyler said skeptically. "In this wind, with that antique, it's impossible." "Impossible is just another word for haven't learned how yet," Rachel murmured. Her finger found the trigger, taking up the slack with practiced ease. The first shot cracked across the desert like thunder. Every spotting scope on the line swung toward the distant target. For 2.5 seconds, there was nothing but wind and waiting. And then, faint but unmistakable, the ring of bullet on steel. "Center hit," Evans called from the tower, his voice cracking with excitement. "Dead center." But Rachel wasn't done. She worked the bolt with smooth efficiency, chambering another round. The wind shifted, gusting suddenly from a different direction. She adjusted without conscious thought, her body reading the changed conditions and translating them into minute corrections. The second shot. Another ring of steel. "She's not even using the wind meter," Marcus said, his voice filled with disbelief. "How is she reading the conditions?" "Experience," Phillips answered. 20 years of it, from the looks of things. Third shot. The sandstorm was getting closer now, visibility dropping. The target was becoming harder to see, even through the spotting scopes. Rachel's simple optics should have made it impossible. Another hit. "This is insane," Lance Morrison muttered. "That's 3 for 3 in conditions that had us missing all morning." Fourth shot. The wind was howling now, switching directions unpredictably. Dust devils danced across the range. Any reasonable shooter would have called it impossible. The steel sang again. Harrison was standing behind her now, watching every movement. He saw what the others missed, the micro-adjustments, the way she read the wind not just at the target, but at multiple points along the bullet's flight path, the way her breathing synchronized with the lulls between gusts. "One more," Rachel said softly. "For Brooks, Chen, and Martinez." She closed her eyes. The range went silent except for the wind. Even the skeptics held their breath. The rifle cracked one final time. This shot seemed different. The sound swallowed almost immediately by the approaching sandstorm. The wait was longer this time, the bullet fighting through layers of conflicting wind. Then, clear and true despite the chaos, the final ring of steel. 5 for 5, Evans announced unnecessarily. Everyone had heard it. In conditions that would challenge a computer-aided system. Rachel safed her weapon and stood slowly, her joints protesting the position. The torn gray t-shirt fluttered in the wind, revealing more of the tattoo on her back. Not just wings, but something more elaborate. Text was visible now. Kyrie, TF8. "What's Kyrie?" Tyler asked, his earlier hostility replaced by curiosity. "That's classified," Phillips said, but he was looking at Rachel with newfound respect. Or it was. Task Force 88, Project Valkyrie. Female operators recruited for missions where a man would be too conspicuous. Dissolved after Iraq. Officially never existed. General Thompson's convoy was still 10 minutes out when Sergeant Major Williams arrived first, having been closer to the range. The barrel-chested Marine took in the scene, 5 humbled snipers, a master gunnery sergeant standing at attention, and a small woman in janitor's clothes holding a rifle that had just outshot $50,000 precision systems. "Somebody want to explain why I got a flash priority message about a security situation at Whiskey Jack?" Williams demanded. His eyes found Phillips. "Master Guns?" "Sergeant Major," Phillips said formally. "I need to report contact with a Category 7 asset." Williams' face changed. Category 7 was a designation he'd only heard once in his career. Assets so classified their very existence was compartmentalized beyond top secret. His eyes found Rachel, took in the torn shirt revealing the partial tattoo, the rifle, the obvious nerve damage in her shooting hand. "Ma'am," Williams said, his tone completely different. "I apologize for any disrespect you've been shown. We weren't aware—" "I'm just a janitor," Rachel said quietly, already wrapping her rifle. "I clean things that need cleaning." "Is that what you call it?" Harrison's voice was rough with emotion. He'd moved closer, his massive frame no longer intimidating, but somehow diminished. 8 years. 8 years I believed you were a coward who got my brothers killed. 8 years of carrying that anger. Rachel looked at him, those green eyes holding depths of pain he was only beginning to understand. Anger is easier than truth sometimes. I'm sorry you had to carry it. Why didn't you defend yourself? Madison demanded. When the accusations came out, when they blamed you, why didn't you tell the truth? Because 3 families needed someone to blame, Rachel replied, and the real traitor had connections high enough to bury anyone who asked questions. It was safer for everyone if Psycho Walker just disappeared. Who was it? Tyler asked urgently. Who betrayed the position? Rachel shook her head. That's not my story to tell. But wheels are turning. Phillips's phone call started something that's been waiting 8 years to finish. As if on cue, the sound of helicopters became audible over the wind. Not the usual Humvees, but Black Hawks. 3 of them, approaching fast and low. That's not standard transport, Lance observed nervously. Williams was on his radio now, his face grim. Understood. Yes, sir. Whiskey Jack is locked down. He turned to the group. Nobody moves. We have incoming VIPs, and this range is now a secured area. The lead Black Hawk flared and landed in a cloud of dust. The side door slid open, and General Marcus Thompson stepped out, 3 stars gleaming on his collar. Behind him, 2 figures in civilian clothes emerged, their suit jackets doing little to hide the bulge of shoulder holsters. Thompson was a legend in special operations circles, a man who'd spent more time in places that didn't exist than most people spent at home. His presence here, arriving by Black Hawk with what were obviously CIA security, meant something significant was happening. His eyes found Rachel immediately. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across 20 yards of desert. Then Thompson did something that stunned everyone present. He saluted, a full formal salute from a 3-star general to a woman in janitor's clothes. Captain Walker, Thompson's voice carried despite the wind, or do you prefer Valkyrie? Rachel didn't return the salute. She couldn't. She wasn't in uniform, wasn't technically military anymore, but she nodded, acknowledging the respect. It's just Rachel now, General. Thompson lowered his salute and approached, his security detail scanning the area with professional paranoia. No, Captain. It's never just Rachel, not after what you've done, what you've sacrificed. He turned to face the assembled Marines, his voice taking on the tone of command. What you're about to hear doesn't leave this range. The classification level was just raised to presidential eyes only, with specific exemptions for everyone present. Harrison stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect, what's going on? Thompson looked at him with something like sympathy. You're Jake Harrison, Ramadi, 2016. You're the Marine she pulled from the burning Humvee after the mortars hit. Yes, sir. Did you know she was already wounded when she saved you? 2 rounds through the left shoulder, nerve damage to her right arm from the building collapse. She still managed to drag your unconscious body 4 blocks to safety. Harrison's face crumbled. The anger he'd carried for 8 years shattered like glass. I didn't know. They told us she had abandoned position, that she was being court-martialed. Disinformation, Thompson said simply. Necessary to protect an ongoing operation. The person who betrayed your position in Ramadi was a high-ranking intelligence officer. We needed him to believe his cover was intact while we traced his entire network. 8 years? Madison's voice was small. You let her be branded a traitor for 8 years to catch 1 mole? Not 1 mole, one of the CIA officers spoke for the first time. 1 mole who was running 17 assets across Iraq and Afghanistan. His intel led to over 40 American deaths before Ramadi. Captain Walker's shot that night, killing Rashid before he could detonate, was the first time one of his operations failed completely. He got suspicious, Thompson continued, started looking at why his perfect intel had failed. So, we gave him what he wanted, a scapegoat. Captain Walker volunteered to be that scapegoat. Rachel had moved away from the group slightly, standing at the edge of the firing line with her wrapped rifle. The sandstorm was almost upon them now, turning the sky an ominous orange-brown. "Ma'am," Tyler approached hesitantly. "My father, Major Ross, was he part of the cover-up?" Rachel turned to look at him, seeing a younger version of a man she'd once respected. "Your father followed orders. He wrote the report he was told to write, but it ate at him. He tried to get the truth out 3 times before they threatened his pension and your college fund." Tyler's hands clenched into fists. "So, everyone just agreed to let you burn?" "Someone had to," Rachel said simply. "Better one person carrying that weight than 40 families wondering if their loved one died because of a traitor we couldn't catch." As the conversation continued, Rachel made another adjustment to her medical equipment, this time retrieving a portable biometric monitoring device. The Compact Trauma Counseling Unit, originally developed for astronauts dealing with isolation-induced psychological stress in extended space missions, had been adapted for combat veterans managing PTSD symptoms. The sophisticated biofeedback technology tracked heart rate variability and brainwave patterns in real time, providing immediate intervention protocols when traumatic memories threatened to overwhelm. For Rachel, facing the ghosts of Ramadi in such a public confrontation required every tool in her medical arsenal to maintain the steady composure that had allowed her to take those 5 perfect shots. General Thompson had been conferring quietly with his CIA escorts. Now he returned to the group, his face grave. "There's more. The reason we're here now, today. The mole we've been hunting, he knows we're closing in, and he's made a mistake. He reached out to someone, trying to verify if Valkyrie was really neutralized. He contacted me," Rachel said quietly. 3 days ago, wanted to meet, claimed he had information about other survivors from my unit." "It's a trap," Harrison said immediately. "Has to be." "Of course it's a trap," Thompson agreed. "But it's also an opportunity. 8 years of patience, and he's finally exposed himself." Williams had been coordinating security on his radio. Now he looked up. "Sir, we have another incoming aircraft. Single helicopter, civilian marking, but military flight pattern." Thompson checked his watch. "Right on time. That would be our friend from the Pentagon, the one who's been protecting our mole all these years." The group tensed. Rachel's hand drifted to her rifle, an unconscious movement that showed her operational instincts were still sharp. "Easy, Captain," Thompson said. "He doesn't know we know. This is all part of the plan." The civilian helicopter landed 50 yards from the Blackhawks. A single figure emerged, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and a bureaucrat's soft physique. He wore an expensive suit that looked out of place in the desert environment. "Who is that?" Madison whispered. "Deputy Director Nathan Crenshaw," Thompson said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Defense Intelligence Agency. Been there 22 years. Untouchable. Or so he thinks." Crenshaw approached with the confidence of a man used to being the highest rank in any room. His eyes swept over the Marines dismissively before fixing on Thompson. "General," Crenshaw's voice was smooth, cultured. "I heard there was a situation requiring my attention. Something about a security breach?" "In a manner of speaking," Thompson replied. His hand moved almost imperceptibly, a signal to his security team. "We've located Captain Walker." For the first time, Crenshaw looked at Rachel. His face remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Fear? It was gone too quickly to tell. "I see," Crenshaw said carefully. "The deserter from Ramadi. I thought she was out of the country." "Deserter?" Harrison stepped forward, his massive frame bristling with newfound protective instinct. "She's no deserter. She's a hero who you hung out to dry." Crenshaw's eyebrows rose. "I'm sorry, Sergeant, but the official record—" "The official record is a lie," Madison interrupted. "We just saw the real footage. We know what really happened." For the first time, Crenshaw's composure cracked slightly. "Footage? What footage?" "All operational recordings from Ramadi were destroyed in the server fire of 2017. "Funny thing about that," Thompson said conversationally. "Captain Walker here had a backup. Personal insurance, you might say. She's been sitting on it for 8 years, waiting for the right moment." This was a lie, of course. The footage Phillips had shown came from CIA archives, declassified minutes ago. But Crenshaw didn't know that. His face had gone pale beneath his tan. "Where is it?" Crenshaw demanded, his smooth voice showing cracks. "That's classified material. She had no right—" "No right?" Rachel spoke for the first time since Crenshaw's arrival. Her voice was soft, but it carried. I had no right to protect myself when you fed Abbas Rashid our position, when you got Brooks, Chen, and Martinez killed for money. The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade. Everyone had gone very still. Crenshaw laughed, but it was forced. That's quite an accusation, Captain. I hope you have proof, because I'll have you arrested for slander. Proof? Rachel reached into her bag again, pulling out a battered notebook. Like communications logs showing contacts between your office and known insurgent leaders. Like bank records of deposits timed perfectly with leaked operations. You're delusional, Crenshaw said, but sweat was beading on his forehead, despite the approaching sandstorm's cooling effect. General, I demand you arrest this woman immediately. I don't think so, Thompson said. He nodded to his security team. Deputy Director Crenshaw, by the authority of Executive Order 10333 and the Patriot Act, you are under arrest for treason, espionage, and conspiracy to commit murder of United States military personnel. Crenshaw tried to run. It was a futile gesture. He was surrounded by Marines and CIA officers in the middle of a desert. He made it perhaps 10 feet before Marcus Webb's massive hand closed on his shoulder, driving him to his knees. That's for Brooks, you son of a... Webb caught himself, professionalism reasserting itself. Sorry, sir. Don't apologize, Sergeant, Thompson said. If Captain Walker wasn't present, I'd use stronger language myself. As Crenshaw was cuffed and led away, still protesting his innocence and threatening everyone with career-ending retaliation, Harrison approached Rachel. The big staff sergeant looked somehow smaller now, humbled by the weight of what he'd learned. Ma'am, he said, his voice rough. God, I'm sorry. 8 years I've hated you. Said things about you. If I'd known... You knew what you were supposed to know, Rachel said gently. That was the point. Your anger, Madison's grief, Tyler's confusion, it all sold the cover story, made Crenshaw feel safe. But the cost, Madison said, tears running down her cheeks. What it cost you. Your career, your reputation, everything. Rachel looked out at the approaching sandstorm, her green eyes distant. Brooks loved bass fishing, used to talk about taking his kid to Lake Havasu when he got home. Chen was learning to play guitar, wanted to start a band. Martinez had just gotten engaged, carried her picture everywhere. She turned back to them. 3 good Marines died because of betrayal. If carrying the blame meant their families had someone to focus their grief on instead of tearing themselves apart with questions, if it meant catching the people responsible, then it was worth it. But what about you? Tyler asked. What about your life? Rachel smiled, the expression transforming her face. I clean toilets. I fix what's broken. I make things work properly again. It's not so different from what I used to do, just quieter. While the security team prepared Crenshaw for transport, General Thompson returned to the group. The sandstorm was almost upon them now, the sky dark with approaching dust. We need to move inside soon, Williams observed. This storm's going to be a big one. Thompson nodded, but didn't move yet. Captain Walker, there's one more thing. Your status. The president signed an executive order this morning. Full reinstatement if you want it. Back pay, benefits, your choice of assignment. The offer hung in the air. Every eye was on Rachel. I appreciate the gesture, General, Rachel said slowly. But I'm done with that life. I found peace in simplicity, in service without recognition. You can't be serious, Lance Morrison spoke up. You're one of the best shooters I've ever seen. The Corps needs people like you. Rachel considered this. Tell me, Sergeant Morrison, this morning, when you saw me, what did you think? Lance flushed. I thought you were just a janitor, nobody important. Exactly. And how many other people do you dismiss every day? The cook who makes your food, the mechanic who maintains your vehicles, the supply clerk who ensures you have ammunition. How many heroes are hiding in plain sight because we only value the ones who wear their accomplishments on their sleeves? The approaching sandstorm finally reached them, the first wall of dust rolling across the range. The group hurried toward the range buildings, but Rachel's words followed them. Inside the range control building, they watched through the windows as the world outside disappeared in a brown haze. The helicopters were barely visible shapes in the murk. Harrison was standing apart from the others, staring at nothing. Rachel approached him quietly. You're carrying guilt now, she observed. Don't. You were a casualty of Ramadi just as much as the others. You just survived." "I should have known," Harrison said bitterly. "Should have questioned the story. Should have defended you." "You were a sergeant following orders, believing what your command told you. That's not a failing, that's discipline." "Some discipline. I've spent 8 years telling anyone who'd listen that you were a coward." Rachel's hand touched his shoulder, a gentle contact that made the big Marine flinch. "Then spend the next 8 telling them the truth. Not about me. I don't need vindication. Tell them about Brooks, Chen, and Martinez. Tell them about the cost of service, the weight of secrets, the price of trust." Madison had been listening. She approached hesitantly. "What can we do? How do we make this right?" "You already have," Rachel assured her. "You listened. You learned. You adjusted when presented with new information. That's all anyone can ask." Tyler was on his phone, his young face intense. "I'm calling my father. He needs to know the truth. He's carried guilt about that report for years." "Tell him I understand," Rachel said. "Tell him following lawful orders, even when they feel wrong, is sometimes the hardest thing a soldier can do." General Thompson had been coordinating the response to Crenshaw's arrest. Now he returned to the group. "The storm's going to keep us here for at least 2 hours. Might as well make use of the time." He looked at Rachel. "Captain, would you consider giving these Marines a lesson? Not in shooting, you've already demonstrated that, but in observation, in reading conditions, in seeing what others miss." Rachel looked at the 5 snipers who had started the day mocking her. Harrison, massive and humbled. Madison, athletic and tear-streaked. Tyler, young and confused. Marcus, quiet and thoughtful. Lance, reassessing everything he thought he knew. "All right," she agreed, "but not as Captain Walker or Valkyrie or any of those old names. Just as someone who's learned a few things about seeing clearly." The sandstorm howled outside, turning the windows of the range control building into opaque brown sheets. The backup generators hummed to life as the main power flickered. In the artificial twilight, Rachel Walker stood before 5 humbled Marine snipers, about to share knowledge that had cost her everything to learn. "Forget your instruments for a moment," she began, her voice carrying easily despite its softness. "Close your eyes." The Marines exchanged glances but complied. Even General Thompson and Master Guns Phillips joined them. "What do you hear?" Rachel asked. "The storm," Tyler answered immediately. "Wind against the building." "Deeper," Rachel prompted. "The storm isn't one sound. It's a symphony. Listen for the layers." Gradually, their expressions changed as they began to parse the white noise into components, the steady whistle of wind through gaps in the roof, the rhythmic rattle of loose siding, the occasional ping of larger debris hitting metal. "Every environment has its own language," Rachel continued. "In Kandahar, the wind through the mountains sounds different at night because the rocks cool at different rates. In Fallujah, you could tell which buildings were occupied by how the air moved through them. Empty structures breathe differently than ones filled with people." She moved to the window, studying the swirling sand. "Open your eyes. Look at the storm. Not at it, but into it. What do you see?" "I can't see anything," Marcus Webb admitted. "Just brown." "Because you're looking for objects instead of patterns." Rachel traced a finger along the glass. "See how the sand moves in sheets? There's a rhythm. Every 12 to 15 seconds, there's a gap. A clear moment, that's when you take your shot." Madison leaned forward, studying the storm with new intensity. "I see it. Like waves breaking." "Exactly. Nature doesn't do chaos. It does complexity. There's always a pattern if you're patient enough to find it." Harrison had been silent, but now he spoke. "In Ramadi, that night, you read all of this in seconds, made the calculation about Rashid, about the civilians, about everything. How?" Rachel turned from the window. "Because I'd already made similar choices 100 times. Each one carved something away, left scar tissue behind. You want to know the real cost of being a sniper? It's not the killing, it's the choosing. Every time you put someone in your crosshairs, you're playing God. Deciding who lives, who dies, based on incomplete information and best guesses." "But you were right," Tyler insisted, "about Rashid, the bomb. This time. But what about the times I wasn't? What about the shepherd in Afghanistan who was just checking on his goats? The teenager in Mosul who was running because he was scared, not because he was hostile?" You don't hear about those because they're classified as operational necessities. The room fell silent except for the storm. General Thompson cleared his throat. Captain Walker, perhaps we should discuss the current situation. Crenshaw's arrest is just the beginning. His network will collapse within 72 hours, Rachel finished. I know. I've been watching them for 8 years. Every contact, every money transfer, every dead drop. Did you think I spent all that time just cleaning toilets? She pulled out a battered smartphone, its screen cracked but functional. With a few swipes, she brought up files that made Thompson's security detail lean forward with interest. 17 assets across CENTCOM, 43 confirmed operations compromised, over $60 million in payments traced through Dubai and Cyprus. She handed the phone to one of the CIA officers. Password is Valkyrie 77. Everything you need is there. You've been running your own intelligence operation, the CIA officer said, with something approaching awe. Alone, without resources or backup. I had resources, Rachel corrected. Just not the kind you're thinking of. The Pakistani dishwasher at the base commissary? He used to be ISI before his conscience got the better of him. The elderly woman who runs the laundry service? Her son died in a drone strike meant for actual terrorists. They talk to me because I'm nobody. Just the janitor who treats them with respect. A network of invisibles, Phillips murmured. People in service positions who see everything because no one sees them. We call ourselves the forgotten, Rachel said simply. Those who serve without recognition, who keep the machine running while others claim glory. Crenshaw never knew we existed because he never looked below his own level. Thompson was reassessing everything. This intelligence, how long have you been gathering it? Since 6 months after Ramadi. When I realized the official investigation was being buried, I started my own. Quiet, patient, one connection at a time. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Madison asked. Because Crenshaw was careful, smart. He would have buried me and disappeared. I needed him to feel safe, to get sloppy. The message 3 days ago about survivors from my unit, that was the first mistake he'd made in 8 years. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken. The solid wall of brown was breaking up into distinct bands, revealing glimpses of the world beyond. There's something else, Thompson said slowly. The message about survivors. Our intelligence suggests it might not have been entirely a lie. Rachel went very still. Explain. 3 weeks ago, satellite surveillance caught an image in Kashmir, a training camp in the mountains. One of the instructors, the analysis was only 60% confident, but they believe it might have been Sarah Chen. The name hit the room like a physical blow. Rachel's composure, maintained through everything else, cracked. Chen died in Mosul, she said, her voice barely audible. 2014. I saw the building collapse. You saw a building collapse, Thompson corrected gently. Bodies were never recovered. The area was too hot. Rachel sank into a chair, her hands trembling more noticeably now. The medical stabilizer on her wrist clicked and whirred, compensating for the sudden spike in nerve activity. If Chen's alive, she began, then stopped. The implications were staggering. She wouldn't be the first operator to go dark after a traumatic event, one of the CIA officers offered, especially from units that officially didn't exist. No support network, no official recognition, no way home except through channels that might be compromised. Or she was turned, Harrison said bluntly. Sorry, ma'am, but it has to be considered. Rachel looked up at him, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Always the tactical thinker. You're right, of course. Chen alive in a Kashmir training camp could mean many things, most of them bad. Which brings us to the reason for my visit, Thompson said. We need someone who knew her, someone who can get close without raising alarms, someone who understands how these forgotten operators think. No. Rachel's response was immediate and firm. I'm done with that world. Captain, I said no. She stood, pacing to the window again. The storm was definitely weakening now, the visibility improving by the minute. I've paid my dues, given everything. I won't go back. Even for Chen? Thompson pressed. Even knowing she might be out there, alone, possibly in trouble? Rachel's reflection in the window looked haggard, older than her 38 years. The weight of choices made and unmade etched in every line. Tell me, Madison said suddenly, about Chen. What was she like? Rachel was quiet for so long, they thought she wouldn't answer. Then, Brilliant, spoke 7 languages, could build a bomb out of kitchen supplies or defuse one with a paperclip. Loved terrible action movies and good whiskey. Used to say the only thing worse than being forgotten was being remembered wrong. Sounds like someone worth saving, Tyler observed. Or stopping, Marcus added grimly. The storm had cleared enough that they could see the helicopters again, sand scoured but intact. The world outside looked different, transformed by the storm's passage. Dunes had shifted, new patterns carved in the earth. I'll need my full kit, Rachel said quietly, not turning from the window. Thompson tried not to show his relief. Anything you need? Not from you, from my network. The Forgotten have resources you can't imagine. Identities that don't exist in any database. Routes that don't appear on any map. Weapons that have no serial numbers because they were built piece by piece in basement workshops. She turned to face them. But I have conditions. This isn't a military operation. I'm not returning to active duty. This is personal. One Forgotten operator looking for another. The agency would want oversight, one of the CIA officers began. The agency can want whatever it likes, Rachel cut him off. You need me more than I need you. Kashmir is tribal territory. Your satellites and drones are useless there. You need someone who can disappear, who can become nobody, who can walk through their camps without raising an eyebrow. And you can do that? Lance asked. Rachel smiled, the expression transforming her face again. I'm a janitor. I clean things. Amazing how many places need cleaning, even in the mountains of Kashmir. The practical details took another hour to arrange. Secure communications, emergency extraction protocols, the delicate dance of official deniability. Through it all, the 5 Marine snipers watched and learned. This was tradecraft at its highest level. The invisible world of intelligence work where a cleaner could be a deadly operative and a general had to negotiate with a janitor. Finally, as the last details were settled, Harrison approached Rachel one more time. I know you said not to carry guilt, he said, but I need to do something. The things I said about you, the way I poisoned your reputation, I need to make it right. Rachel considered him. You want to make it right? Really? Yes, ma'am. And then learn to see. Really see. Every person who serves you food, cleans your barracks, maintains your equipment. Look at them. Learn their names, treat them with respect, because any one of them could be another me, another forgotten hero whose story you'll never know. Is that why you kept the janitor job? Madison asked. Even after you could have done anything else? Partially, but also... Rachel paused, choosing her words carefully. When you've spent years being the angel of death, deciding who lives and dies from 1,000 yards away, there's something healing about simple service. About making things clean, fixing what's broken, creating order from chaos. It's a different kind of power. The helicopters were warming up outside, rotors beginning to turn. Time was running short. One last lesson, Rachel said, addressing all 5 snipers. The hardest shots aren't the long ones. They're not the ones in bad weather or difficult conditions. The hardest shots are the ones you don't take. The targets you let walk because the intelligence is uncertain. Because the collateral damage is too high, because sometimes the mission isn't worth the cost. She looked at each of them in turn. In the coming years, you'll be faced with those choices. When you are, remember this. Every trigger pull echoes forward in time. The person you kill today might have been the one to save lives tomorrow. The person you spare might be the one who costs lives. You'll never know. That's the burden. Carry it well. General Thompson signaled it was time to go. The helicopters were ready. The storm fully passed. As they filed out of the building, Tyler caught Rachel's arm. Ma'am, the Kashmir mission, will we know if you find her? If Chen's really alive? Rachel looked at him, this young Marine who'd learned so much in a single afternoon. Check the janitor's schedule. If I come back, you'll see me around. If not, she shrugged. Someone else will clean the toilets. As she walked toward the waiting Black Hawk, Harrison called out one last time. Valkyrie, she turned. Give 'em hell, ma'am. She smiled, snapped a perfect salute, despite not being in uniform, and climbed aboard. The helicopters lifted off in a cloud of dust, disappearing into the desert sky. 6 months later, Lance Morrison was at the range, practicing in the early morning calm. The sun was just rising, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. He'd been coming here every day since the incident, working on seeing patterns instead of just reading instruments. Movement caught his eye. Someone was walking across the far end of the range, pushing a maintenance cart. Small figure, efficient movements, gray uniform of the base custodial staff. Lance grabbed his spotting scope, focusing on the distant figure. Light brown hair and a messy bun. A familiar gait, despite a slight limp that hadn't been there before. As he watched, the figure paused, seeming to sense observation. She turned slightly, just enough for him to see her profile. Rachel Walker, alive, back. She gave the tiniest nod in his direction, then continued pushing her cart toward the facilities building. Lance lowered his scope, a grin spreading across his face. She was back. The Valkyrie had returned to her roost. But as he packed up his gear, something nagged at him. He pulled out his phone, checking the duty roster for custodial staff. There it was, R. Walker, building maintenance, toilet block 3. Below her name, a new entry, S. Chen, assistant custodian, recently hired. Lance stared at the screen for a long moment, then deliberately closed the app. Some things were better left unexamined. Some stories were meant to remain untold. He slung his rifle and headed back to barracks, whistling tunelessly. Behind him, the sun continued its rise, casting long shadows across the range. In the distance, 2 small figures pushed their maintenance carts side by side, talking quietly. Just 2 janitors, cleaning up messes, fixing what was broken. Nothing more, nothing less. And sometimes, that was everything. As Lance reached the barracks, he found Harrison waiting for him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Saw her too?" Harrison asked quietly. "Saw who?" Lance replied, accepting the coffee. "Just a couple of janitors doing their job." Harrison nodded slowly. "Right, just janitors." He took a sip of coffee, then added, "Tyler says the Kashmir situation resolved itself, mysteriously. Training camp shut down, instructors disappeared. Imagine that." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher. Finally, Harrison spoke again. "You know what she told me about seeing people, really seeing them?" "Yeah. I've been trying, really trying. Yesterday I had lunch with Ahmad from the motor pool. Been working here 15 years. I never knew he used to be an engineer in Syria. Has 3 kids, all in college now." Lance smiled. "Rodriguez in supply, former Navy corpsman. Saved 12 Marines in Fallujah before an IED took his leg. Never talks about it unless you ask." "The forgotten," Harrison murmured. "They're everywhere, aren't they?" "Serving without recognition," Lance agreed, keeping the machine running. In the distance, a door opened at toilet block 3. 2 figures emerged, one teaching the other the most efficient way to refill paper towel dispensers. Their voices carried faintly on the morning air, speaking in what might have been Pashto or Dari or any of a dozen regional languages. "Think we should report it?" Lance asked, not really meaning it. Harrison finished his coffee in one long swallow. "Report what? That the janitors are doing their job? That the toilets are clean and the paper towels are stocked?" They turned and walked into the barracks together, leaving the morning to unfold in its own way. Behind them, the range stood empty except for the whisper of wind through the targets, the dance of heat mirages beginning to rise from the sand, and the quiet movements of 2 women who had found their way home through the simple act of service. On the wall of the range control building, someone had taped a handwritten note next to the duty roster. The paper was simple white copy stock, already beginning to curl at the edges from the desert heat, but the words written on it seemed to carry weight beyond their simple ink. "The hardest battles are fought in silence by warriors whose names you'll never know." The handwriting was steady, controlled, the kind that came from years of writing after-action reports in the field. Each letter was formed with military precision, yet there was something deeply personal about the message. Below it, in different handwriting. This one looser, more hurried, as if the writer had paused only briefly between tasks. Another message appeared. Some wars end, others just pause between battles. This script had the urgency of someone who understood that peace was always temporary, that the next conflict was always brewing somewhere just beyond the horizon. The ink was different too, cheaper, the kind from a pen borrowed from the supply closet. And below that, in neat, precise letters that looked like they'd been written by someone accustomed to filling out maintenance logs and inventory sheets. A third message, "But every toilet cleaned is a small victory against chaos." These words were written in pencil, practical and erasable, as if the author knew that nothing was permanent, but still felt compelled to mark their truth on the world, however briefly. The morning sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the base. The overnight crew was changing shifts with the day workers. Marines jogged past in formation, their cadence calls echoing off the buildings. The motor pool roared to life as mechanics began their daily maintenance routines. The commissary opened its doors, and the smell of brewing coffee mixed with diesel fumes and the ever-present dust. Life at Whiskey Jack Range continued its rhythm, a heartbeat that never stopped. Young Marines, fresh from boot camp with their high and tight haircuts and eager eyes, hurried to their first advanced marksmanship classes. They passed the janitor pushing her cart toward the barracks, never giving her a second glance. Just another invisible person maintaining their world. Seasoned sergeants conducted equipment checks, their practiced eyes missing nothing about their weapons, while simultaneously missing everything about the woman refilling the hand sanitizer dispensers. She moved with an economy of motion that spoke of years of practice, but they saw only a civilian contractor doing menial labor. In the command building, officers planned operations and training schedules, their maps and laptops spread across conference tables. Through the window, they might glimpse the custodial staff emptying trash bins, replacing fluorescent bulbs, ensuring the coffee makers never ran dry. Background figures in their important world, as essential and unnoticed as electricity or running water. The chow hall filled and emptied in waves as meal times came and went. Hundreds of conversations flowed over trays of food, stories of home, complaints about training, dreams of future deployments. The two women mopping the floors after each rush heard it all, filing away information with the same precision they once used to catalog enemy movements. Their mops moved in overlapping patterns, covering every inch of floor, missing nothing. As afternoon approached, the rifle range would fill again with the sharp crack of precision fire. Snipers would lie prone in the dust, calculating windage and elevation, trying to place rounds through targets at impossible distances. They never wondered who cleaned the range shacks, who stocked the cleaning supplies for their weapons, who ensured the target mechanisms continued to function despite the sand and grit. Marines came and went, training and learning, preparing for wars they might never fight or conflicts that hadn't yet begun. They walked past their maintenance staff dozens of times each day, never knowing that their bathrooms were maintained by legends who had more confirmed kills than entire platoons. Their paper towels were restocked by ghosts who had operated in countries that couldn't be named, completing missions that never officially occurred. Their messes were cleaned by warriors who had chosen a different kind of service, who found purpose in the simple act of creating order from chaos. The 3 messages on the wall would remain until someone decided they violated some regulation about unauthorized postings. They would be removed, filed away, forgotten. But tomorrow or next week or next month, new messages would appear. Different handwriting, same truths. Because some stories demanded to be told, even if only in fragments, even if only to those who knew how to read between the lines. In the end, that was the most perfect cover of all.